Welcome once again to our channel. Here we bring to life the long-buried story of Africa. Today we continue with Egypt, the gift of the Nile. The Nile flowed as it always had, calm, patient, eternal. But the world around it was changing. The small villages that once whispered in the night now roared with ambition. Trade had flourished, craftsmanship had advanced, and leaders had become kings in all but name. Egypt was on the edge of something extraordinary, a transformation that would turn mud huts into monuments, and tribal leaders into gods. But before there was Egypt, there were two lands, two hearts beating under the same sun. In the south lay Upper Egypt, long and narrow, a valley carved between cliffs where the Nile cut through the desert. Its people were fierce and proud, wearing the white crown, worshipping gods tied to the falcon and the lotus. In the north spread Lower Egypt, where the Nile split into a wide delta that met the Mediterranean. It was a land of fishermen and farmers, rich in crops and culture, marked by the red crown, the bee, and the papyrus plant. They shared the same river but spoke different tongues. They honored different gods, told different stories, lived under different rulers. But destiny had other plans. In the southern valleys, near a city called Hierakonpolis, a ruler began to rise. His name was Narmer, or as later legends called him, Menes. He was strong, strategic, and above all, visionary. He looked at the divided lands and saw what others could not, unity. He saw a river that did not care for borders, a people meant to be one. And so, he began to march. The wars were not brief. They were battles of will, of fire, of blood. Villages burned, armies clashed, and banners of the red and white crowns faced each other in the dust. But Narmer did not relent. When he finally conquered Lower Egypt, legend says he wore both crowns, red and white, upon his head. It was not just a symbol. It was the birth of a new identity. The two lands had become one. For the first time in history, Egypt stood united, a single kingdom under a single ruler. The world's first nation had been born. Archaeologists would later uncover a remarkable artifact, the Narmer palette, carved from dark green slate. It showed Narmer wearing the white crown of Upper Egypt on one side, and the red crown of Lower Egypt on the other, a visual declaration of unification. But this was not just art. It was propaganda, ancient and powerful. Every stroke told a story, the king striking down his enemies, the gods watching over him, the land submitting to his rule. This was how Egypt learned to tell its story, through symbols, not just words. Through stone that would outlast time itself. To rule Egypt was not merely to lead, it was to embody the divine. Narmer, and those who followed him, were not just men. They were seen as the bridge between earth and heaven. The Pharaoh was both king and god, the living Horus, son of the sun. From this belief grew one of Egypt's most profound truths, that order, ma'at, harmony, balance, and justice, must rule the land. The king's duty was to uphold ma'at against chaos, to keep the world in balance, just as the Nile kept life flowing. This spiritual code would define Egypt for millennia. Every pyramid, every law, every temple, all were built around this heartbeat of order and divine purpose. After Narmer's victory, Egypt entered the early dynastic period, a time of invention, expansion, and identity. His successors built new cities, Abydos, Memphis, and Thinis, and established dynasties that would rule for centuries. Memphis, said to have been founded by Narmer himself, became the capital, a shining city at the meeting point of Upper and Lower Egypt. It was perfectly placed, a gateway between two worlds, a symbol of unity carved into the earth. And with this unity came stability. Writing began to emerge, the earliest forms of hieroglyphs. Administration was organized. Trade with neighboring lands expanded. Egypt was no longer just surviving. It was building, systematically, beautifully, ambitiously. Imagine standing on the banks of the Nile around 3000 BCE. The sun is rising, casting gold across the fields. Farmers lead oxen through the rich black soil. Stone builders carve the first great tombs for their kings. Priests light incense to honor the gods, falcon, jackal, cat, and crocodile. Every act, every ritual, every grain of wheat planted became part of something far greater, the soul of a nation awakening. What made Egypt so powerful wasn't just its kings or its wars. It was its people, organized, creative, deeply spiritual. They believed that everything had a purpose, from the flow of the river to the beating of the heart. And it was that belief that gave them strength. A strength that would carry them through centuries of triumph and turmoil. The kings of the first and second dynasties were buried in tombs at Abydos, decorated with carvings and treasures for the afterlife. These tombs grew larger and more complex over generations, as the idea of eternity deepened. Egyptians didn't build monuments because they loved death. They built them because they believed in forever. They saw life as one chapter in an endless story, and they wanted to be remembered. In this belief, they found their immortality. And from that desire, came the pyramids. Egypt was now united, strong, and filled with purpose. Its kings ruled as gods, its cities thrived, its culture blossomed along the river that never stopped giving. But ambition never sleeps. In the desert sands to the north, a vision was forming, of tombs that would touch the sky, of stone structures that would defy time itself. The pharaohs of the next age were ready to build their legacy, not in words, but in monuments. Thank you for staying with us. Please like, share, and subscribe to help bring Africa story back to life.